Darkness pressed in around Fee like a cold frost, making the hair stand up on her arms and stealing the breath from her lungs. She blinked, unable to tell whether her eyes were open or closed. Everything was just blackness. The smooth stone floor was like ice under her bare feet, and she shivered in her nightgown, wrapping her arms around herself. She had a feeling that if she could see anything, her breaths would be white clouds in front of her face. The silence was so oppressive, it echoed like a ringing in her ears. Fee squeezed her eyes shut, trying to get her bearings and figure out where she was. A sharp tug on her hand made Fee's eyes spring open. She looked down to find a shining golden thread looped around her fingers, glowing over the butterfly curse mark on her palm. The thread spiraled off into the gloom like an invitation. Fee lifted the golden string and began pulling it in, hand over hand, following the unspooling thread deeper into the blackness. A pit of dread opened in her stomach, gnawing at her insides as she went on. She had a feeling she had been here before. She knew where this path ended. Fee began to run, her bare feet slapping against the stone. The golden thread was so light it felt like nothing in her hands. Something rattled ahead of her, concealed by the dark. Fee gripped the thread like a lifeline. Suddenly, she was face to face with two gleaming red eyes. The darkness shrank back as a bone creature surged up in front of her, spiral horns rising from its bleached skull. Its spine was a twist of disjointed vertebrae, and its arms were ropes of sinew ending in jutting bone claws. It was a monster with red eyes, but still Briar's eyes. The creature seized Fee by the arms, those sharp claws so long they dragged against her back, as its massive bat-like wings unfurled above her. Its red eyes burned like fire. They were so captivating, it took Fee a moment to notice that the end of the golden thread disappeared into the empty space in the creature's chest, where its heart should be. Terror made everything slow down, the shiver in her lungs, the clench of fear in her gut. Fee was frozen. The skull face was close enough that she could make out the tiny imperfections around the eye sockets, close enough to kiss. A thrill of horror slid through her as the skull tipped toward her, but in the end, the creature only lifted one gruesome hand, clutching the golden thread. There was a voice in her head suddenly, Briar's voice. Where does it lead? Fee shot up from the nightmare, panting and sweating. She scrambled to her feet so fast, she knocked the chair she had fallen asleep in to the floor. Her hand slid across the battered desk, scattering papers and quills as she blinked the dream away. It took a moment to recognize the things around her. The small, round room of gray stone, her lumpy pallet on the floor, the arched window that let in the only light. Suddenly, Fee needed air. She stumbled over to the wide sill, perching carefully on the edge and digging her fingers into the rough stones. There was no glass or shutter on this window. Cold sweat had made her blouse damp under her black vest, and the breeze chased goosebumps up her arms. It was a warm, sunny afternoon, but there was always a chill here, in the Spindle Witch's tower. Fee looked out at the landscape she'd studied 100 times. High, dark mountains ringed the valley, their slopes so steep it looked like they'd been shorn away. A dead forest lurked at the base of the tower, which wasn't so much a building as a jagged spire of stone piercing the heart of the valley, sheer and unyielding. Instead of carefully smoothed arches and polished flagstones, everything in the Spindle Witch's tower was narrow and rough-hewn, and the doorways were so low, Fee had to duck to get through them. There were only 3 rooms, stacked on top of each other at the very tallest part of the tower, all the windows facing the same direction. There were no stairs to the base of the tower, no way out at all, except the same way she'd gotten in. Briar.